Alright, I'm here with the Edison Home, and this is kind of a for fun video. I'm taking a very horological approach to getting this thing set up as I'm preparing it to go back into the cabinet. I've got the top works here upside down, and of course, before you ever do any work on a machine like this, you always remove the carriage because you do not want to damage anything here. And as you saw in this opening shot here, I've taken some measurements of the driven pulley on the main shaft and the drive pulley that's on the fourth wheel arbor in the motor, and figured out what the ratio is and calculated what the RPM is. This would mean that the fourth wheel is running at 106 2/3 revolutions per minute. The main shaft is running at 160 RPM. I also found what the gear ratio is between the fourth wheel and the governor, and I did not, the correct way to do this would be to count the teeth. I did not do that. I rotated the governor one turn at a time and watched a spoke on this wheel here and did it and found out what the ratio is. And so this works out to 1:12, which means at 106 2/3 RPM here, the governor is operating at 1280 RPM when the machine is running at 160, which is the correct speed to play back a standard cylinder record. And the reason I'm doing all this is I want to set the governor to where it's in about the mid-range of the adjustment on the adjusting screw here. What I think the mid-range should be, where it's not too far in and it's not too far out, where I can do a little bit of adjusting on it if I need to. And the way you do this is you loosen this screw here and you move the entire governor assembly back and forth on the governor arbor to sort of set it in the range that it's going to operate at. And I adjusted it to where it was running at 1280 RPM, where it was initially set, and then I moved it a little bit after I adjusted this to where I thought the mid-range would be, and it's in about the mid-range right now, more or less. And now we're going to adjust the governor with a strobe, like the same strobe I used on the antique fans, to get it to run at 1280 RPM. This is also going to show us if there is any instability in the governor. This is a digital strobe. It's very stable. We're going to be able to see directly whether the governor is stable or not. In fact, I've had a lot of trouble with my Triumph phonographs, and I'll have to do a separate video explaining this more, or else this one will run too long. I've had a lot of trouble on my Triumph phonographs with warble, and so this segues into a very interesting exercise where we could use the strobe to look at the governor on the Triumph machines to see what's going on with them. I've got the strobe here. Let's turn it on. It should be pretty close to 1280 from when I used it last. Using the vernier adjustment on the back to try and get it set. Okay, there we are. Make sure that we're wound plenty tight enough. And now all we do is adjust the governor until it appears to stand still. There we go. Okay, the governor is now got just a little bit of creep going on here on my strobe. As you can see, the governor is running very steady there, very rock steady. See just a little bit of variation in that weight there, but not very much. You can see how steady it is. So this should be a very good steady running motor then. You see how still that is? I see we're still getting a little bit of creep on this. That's kind of annoying. Just goes to show you that just because it's digital doesn't mean it's perfect. I actually had to use the coarse adjustment there because I was out of range on the fine adjustment. And that looks real good. What do we think? Okay. So that's that little exercise in governor adjustment. You can try this for yourself if you like, but that, and I had a little bit of trouble there because this was not, you see the spring is not quite strong enough to return the arm back to the screw with the force of the, see now that it's off, it's fine, but there's actually enough power in this motor that it was putting quite a bit of force this way, trying to make the governor run faster against the governor yoke there, and so it was actually making it difficult for this arm to follow the screw. And I made sure that there's the correct amount of play in that so that it's loose. Although sometimes if this set screw up here is not tight, this is a tip for you. This pivots on a brass stud, which this screw screws into for the brake arm, and it's often a common complaint of Edison owners that the start-stop brake is loose. There's a set screw back there that holds the brass stud that this assembly pivots on. When you're putting this together, you have this off, and you set that up to where there's just a little bit of shake there, so that this is free to operate under the influence of that spring and follow the adjusting screw. Then you lock that screw down, and then you install this and use that screw to hold it in place and set the tension there. If you don't get this screw adjusted right, and you get too happy adjusting this screw, you'll actually pull that stud this way and pinch this against the casting there while adjusting that. Then it'll be over that way as far as it will go, and you will soon find that you cannot get that screw tight enough to hold the lever in position. So that's a little tip. So I'm very happy with the way that's adjusted. That's a very smooth running motor, so we'll have to mount this in the cabinet now and belt it up and see how smooth it runs with the top works connected up. So look for that in a future installment.